Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So one of my subscribers, I don't remember the exact person who gave me a heads up on this, but thank you for it. I saw it as I was leaving, so I was like, seems like people might be interested in that. Let's do that story. Super lobbyists. I'm gonna call him super lobbyists. Clinton super lobbyists. Tony Podesta may be getting limited immunity for testimony against Paul Manafort. Now, Paul Manafort has been accused of all sorts of financial crimes. And the interesting point here is that many of the stuff came up during the Trump case, but it is unrelated entirely to the Trump case. Meaning, using Manafort to hit Trump over the head, even though it doesn't really have anything to do with Trump. Now, it sounds like what Mueller's trying to do is squeeze Manafort to see if anything comes out related to Trump. That's what it seems like. They're trying to squeeze him. Meaning, trying to give him limited immunity is trying to get him to talk. It is a talk. Now, the interesting part to this is that the super lobbyist, Tony Podesta, has plenty of ties to Russia. Plenty. I remember reading this story a while back, so let's bring this up. But first, let's do the news. Tony Podesta offered immunity to testify against Paul Manafort. I don't like using Fox News in general, but this is just basics. I'm going to spiral into something else. Tony Podesta has offered immunity by special counsel Robert Mueller to testify against Paul Manafort. Fox News' Tucker Carlson reported, citing two unnamed sources. Podesta is the founder of the Podesta Group and brothers to John Podesta, who was chairman of the Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. The Podesta Group worked with Manafort, a former chairman of Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, to lobby on behalf of the Ukrainian interests in the United States, without properly registering at the time under Foreign Agent Registration Act, Carlson said. Manafort and the group worked on a campaign called the European Center for Modern Ukraine, the Washington Times reported. Interesting part to that is when you look into the details, Manafort was acting in U.S. interests, even though it had to do with Ukraine, but he was using U.S. interests in the Ukraine. It's a little bit more to it than the way it's been characterized. Now, that being said, let's jump to something else. Because Manafort may be completely guilty, I don't know. And I got to be honest, I don't even particularly care that much. I care more so about the case because super lobbyist, Podesta, getting limited immunity on this. If you remember, Podesta had to step down from his firm over the blow-up of the events that were taking place. I forget the exact thing. It wasn't the Panama Papers. At least I don't think it was. I think it was something else. But he had to eventually step down and disgrace himself. He is under potential prosecution. Hence the limited immunity. Now, let's look at this part. This is Forbes. The media focus on Trump-Russia connections ignores the much more extensive and lucrative business relationship with top Democrats with Kremlin associate oligarchs and companies. Thanks to the Panama Papers, we know that the Podesta Group, founded by John Podesta's brother, super lobbyist Tony Podesta, lobbied for the Russian largest bank, Sberbank. Oh, geez. S-B-E-R Bank. Sberbank. Those words don't go together in normal English. Sberbank. In Kremlin, they don't do anything major without Putin's go-ahead, and they don't tell him no either, explained the retired senior U.S. intelligence office official. According to Reuters report, Tony Podesta was among the high-profile lobbyists registered to represent organizations backing Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych. Among these, European Center, which paid Podesta $900,000 for his lobbying. That's not all. The busy Podesta Group also represented Uranium One, the uranium company acquired by the Russian government, which received approval from the Hillary Clinton State Department to mine the uranium in the United States and gave Russian 20% control of the United States uranium. The New York Times reported Uranium One's chairman, Frank Gustria, made significant donations to the Clinton Foundation, and Bill Clinton was paid $500,000 for one speech from a Russian investment bank that has links to the Kremlin and was promoting Uranium One stock. Notably, Frank Gistria, God, that name. Let's just say Frank. The Clinton Foundation, largest, most controversial donor, does not appear anywhere in the Clintons' non-private emails. It is possible that the emails of such key donors were automatically scrubbed to protect the Clinton Foundation. Look, I don't particularly know that. Lobbying for Russia is a bipartisan activity. Look, my point to this is pretty straightforward. Tony Podesta is potentially getting a pass. Manafort is not. And they're not prosecuting Manafort necessarily for what Manafort has done. They're prosecuting Manafort in order to try to get information on somebody else. That's assuming that there is information on somebody else to get. Tony Podesta is getting a walk. That's amazing. So let's see the other part, because there's another story on this also. Just to give it a little bit of heads up. Mueller releases a list of more than 500 pieces of evidence against Manafort. Special counsel Robert Mueller's office on Wednesday released an itemized list of evidence prosecutors are considering for use against Paul Manafort as the former Trump's aide's Washington, D.C. trial approaches. The list, first reported by Politico, contains 500 items ranging from immunity agreements to texts between Manafort's Ukraine's former president and fellow U.S. political consultant. Other items on the list include photographs and documents expensive purchase prosecutors say Manafort made with money he attempted to hide from the United States authorities after working for pro-Russia political parties in the Ukraine. Manafort is charged with a number of financial crimes, including bank fraud and money laundering. Honestly, if we're being honest, Manafort is charged because he worked with Trump. I'm not saying that Manafort is not guilty of crimes. What I am saying is those crimes nobody probably would have cared if it wasn't for him working on the campaign with Trump. That is not me saying don't prosecute Manafort. The only main issue that I have with this is conflation that a prosecution for Manafort in some way is affecting Trump. They're always used together because the prosecutions essentially came out of this thing of going after Trump. Democrats use this consistently to show that there was some level of corruption, even though what they're going after Manafort has nothing to do with Trump. It's amazing. So I'm not going to keep this one long because there's not much to keep on this very particular point. But yeah, they're going after Manafort. And again, I don't care if they go after Manafort. I guess my issue with this is so much scrutiny being applied to one while it gives the other person a pass. And in this case, literally giving the other one a pass. If they wanted to go after Manafort, they don't need Podesta. They're trying to squeeze him. So, we'll see. Oh, goody. Uranium One classic Clinton criminal activities. No, my point is showing this. I wasn't going to go down a rabbit hole with it. My point in showing this was that there are other links that if Mueller really did, and I understand it, Mueller's thing is to show Russia collusion with Trump, not collusion with Russia as an absolute, which gives certain people in the Democratic Party a pass because it's not within the scope of Mueller's investigation. That being said, it looks magnificently hypocritical to look at all of the stuff that's associated with Trump and Russia and ignore all of the Russian connections within the Democratic Party. That always seems just so weird to me. And yet, that's what's taking place. And the conflation that crimes that are committed by Manafort somehow are indicative of crimes that may be committed by Trump. It's so bizarre. Just because he worked with Trump, that he somehow is somehow indicative of Mueller, of Trump committing a crime. It's so bizarre. The connections and the way those things are made. This guy's a criminal, so just by standing beside this guy, you are also somehow a criminal in this process. They haven't found it yet. And the crimes that Mueller, Manafort are being prosecuted for at this point have nothing to do with Trump. So I'm going to end this here. There's not much on this particular bone either. Are Clintonians, all Clintonians are protected by whom, though? That's funny. I've maintained tinfoil hat theory Podesta colluded with Russia to lose for a while now. Nobody ever rigs a fight with the winner, always collude with the loser. I see what you mean. It's the loser that decides not to win the fight, not the winner that decides to win it. And ultimately, you always have the capacity to lose it, not necessarily always the capacity to win it. I understand what you mean, Danny. I don't think they wanted to lose, though. That's what I disagree with. Like, you're taking incompetence as being not a part of the process. I take incompetence as being a part of the process. She was a horrible candidate. She was a horrible candidate. All right, I'm going to end this. I will probably see you again shortly. I'm looking through my thing for stories. I'm just looking at the stories that I was going to talk about doing. There's one that's a little bit more complex that I don't know if I can go in within a time frame that I need to, because I need to leave around 11. But I will see you guys shortly. I'm going to keep this one relatively quick also. And 10 minutes is not bad. See you guys momentarily. Danny and I, a lot of unfocused errors, lots and lots and weird details that don't fit. That, Danny, I agree with you. That I do agree. I agree. All right, I'll end it here. And Danny, by the way, I think the unforced errors might have to do with hubris. Hubris is a thing. Like, there's a military campaign, I think it was a crusade, during the Crusades, where they marched, I don't remember the exact country that they were marched from, some European country. And he assumed that because he was appointed by God, that he would win automatically. That ultimately, it doesn't matter if my soldiers march for days on end. It doesn't matter if they're going from point A to point B. When they get there, they're going to be able to fight and they're going to win because God is on our side. And they lost. They lost for obvious military reasons. You've worked your soldiers over for God knows how long. And regardless of what God you believe in, God is not on the field fighting with you. You got routed. Hubris is a thing. And yeah, if you go into a campaign thinking that it's a win and thinking that this guy is a mark and thinking that ultimately nobody in their right mind will vote this person or think this person is better than me for this particular competition, well, how would you run the competition? Think of Sanders for the moment. Sanders goes into a competition thinking he has no chances of winning at all. And I'm just going to push the conversation. His perspective, how he goes into it, matters, dramatically affects what he does as he goes into the process. An outlooker on the outside of that, looking at this, can't penetrate the internal world of the individual as they go about their way and what they're thinking about, because what they're thinking is going to create the reality around them. Just like you looking at this saying that this looks like nonsense, there's a lot of unforced errors. Those people are lunatics. Why are they acting this way? They're acting this way because they believe it was a lock. If in their heads this is somewhat of a lock, then I don't necessarily have to take certain precautions and certain actions. If you don't think your house is going to burn down, do you ever really need an extinguisher? Not so much. Why do I need money on an extinguisher if I don't ever think my house is going to burn down? Why do I need to pay for insurance if I ever don't think calamity is going to take place? I'm making the point that the perspective affects the behavior of the individual, and what you would consider to be an unforced error on the outside looking in. It's them thinking that this is a lock and that there's, we don't necessarily have to do X, Y, Z in order to win it because we're going to win it. That's all I'm saying. There's no way to disclude that particular way of looking at these events as opposed to thinking that there's something going on behind the scenes. No, I think they just lost. I think they lost. I think they had a win. This is a lock. This is a win. We don't have to go to Wisconsin. Why do I have to waste money going to Wisconsin? It's a lock. That's what I mean. I could be wrong. True, it's an admitted tinfoil. Look, I don't think it's a tinfoil hat. No, I don't. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy theory. I don't think that at all. It's the different point of view in regards to what we think is taking place. I don't like this term. I know I use the term sometimes when I'm being an asshole, but I don't fully like the term, especially when it comes to just us having a conversation in regards to discourse. I don't like it because it tries to minimize what somebody is saying, and sometimes what somebody is saying is the thing that needs to be said. Oftentimes the media hates this idea of other people having other narratives and other perspectives because it challenges their narrative of events. Well, oftentimes their narrative of events is just crafted. It's just the narrative. It's not the reality per se. They weren't necessarily there, at least not all the time. And there's always a gap between what's taking place in the world versus your ability to perceive and understand what's taking place in the world. The moment that you forget the fact that nothing is true, well, you run into problems. I don't know the reality of this, Danny. So I don't necessarily want to say it's the tinfoil hat thing. I ask myself which one is more likely. For example, I could say that Bernie Sanders should have ran the campaign, leaving it all on the field from day one. Like run that campaign like where he's willing to slit his wrist to win that contest. But what if you don't think you have a chance? Do you slit your wrist to win the contest if you don't think you have a chance of winning the contest? Fuck no. Hell no. Would you do it if you knew you could win? Those are different perspectives. If you and I are playing chess, and I'm saying what you do in those scenarios are different. If you and I are playing chess, if I think I can win a position versus I think the only thing I have in this position is a draw, I play those games differently. Playing to win in a position that only allows for a draw, I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose. Now, if I'm playing a position that only allows for a draw, in order to get a draw, even though there's a win in the position, I'm just saying how you perceive it to some degree is the way you operate, not with an absolute objective point of view on the way the world actually is. It's only the perspectives, like you're shining a perspective out. Hope that makes sense. Hope that makes sense. Two wings of the same corrupt bird. I love that. I love that. E-blasphemy. How do you progressive not know about the Arab slave trade? 500 million Africans marched over the Sahara, castrated the men, and there are no black communities in Arabia. I don't think I knew about a slave trade in that way. I knew that slaves were not just a white thing. Meaning I knew that blacks also had slaves. And I knew that they were selling people into slavery and bondage. They may not necessarily know how bad it was, but did they have a slave trade? But good to know. I'll look it up, you blasphemy. It's not relevant. If his art were on the wall behind Jamal, there would certainly be a different audience. What are you talking about? If my art were on the wall behind me, there would be a different audience. Some people play pawn to g3. If you ever consider pawn to e4, you're a weaker player. I like to keep all choices to play it through, ruled out. Whatever. I play e4 every time. I don't play e4 every time now, but e4 to win. I know there's some people who think that way. I gotta be honest. I think people that think that way are weaker players. Just by nature. They have to be. It's not a... Chess is not an absolutist game. If anybody's saying e4 is weaker, you're missing the boat. That's a nonsense perspective. Tony Podesta art collection, super sick. I haven't seen it. Mueller is the guy who told us that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Now he's on some kind of moral leader. I know, that's weird, right? That's so bizarre. I don't buy Russia collusion. I don't either. So I have to keep certain explanations on the table. Danny, I agree with you on that. Look. It is impossible. Or at the very least, no one knows a forced win in chess. If no one knows a forced win in chess, then saying that e4 is automatically weaker is nonsense. Playing g3 doesn't keep all your options on the table. The very act of moving the pawn to g3 removes options. You can never put that pawn back on g2. Not to mention, it disallows your bishop from gaining the access. Look. My point is, any move that you make has a certain weakness associated with it. Saying that g3 is somehow superior to e4 is nonsense. I would even think the opposite. I would think g3 is a weaker move to e4 because e4 allows more options. But I feel you. That's one of those chess discussions that the rest of the people who are here are going to say, what the fuck are they talking about? The first move is always fatal for somebody. Tristan Skites. Yes. Yes. But by the same token, it also allows a certain latitude. Germany plowing into Russia during the Second World War. If Germany had the fuel reserves that Germany needed, Germany would have plowed through Russia before Russia could have ever got its forces back together. Germany had, I think, 2 months of fuel in order to pull that operation off, or 2 or 3 months. And they were at that point hurting. And I say that to say, the whole Pact of Steel thing, that whole merging into Poland, allowed a breach of the Russian borders before Russia could get itself together. First move matters. It's just, it's just not the most important. And the first move we're getting into the chess and military conversations. All right, I'm going to end this because we're getting into the weeds. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through Patreon. God damn it, this video was like 10 minutes and now we're at 20 minutes. I will see you guys shortly. In a nutshell, Tony Podesta deal with Mueller for limited immunity in order to go after Paul Manafort. Have a good one.